So you're tasked with scaling your AI program across the organization, but your center of excellence is becoming a bottleneck. In today's episode, we'll talk about how to scale your AI program with citizen development. So let's jump right in. Awesome. So welcome to What's the Buzz, where leaders and hands-on experts share how they have turned hype into outcome. Today, we'll talk about scaling your AI programs via citizen development. And who better to talk about it than someone who's actually written a new book about just that, Ian Barkin. Hey, Ian, thank you so much for joining.
Andreas, thanks for having me. Awesome new intro, by the way. That was very cool. Thanks for letting me be part of that whole thing, and a thrill to be here. I love the show. I love the work you've done over the last few years in educating our community. You are clearly an expert yourself, and yeah, it's fun to be here. Happy 2025.
Yeah, exactly. Happy 2025. I couldn't be more excited to have you on the show, and we've talked about this for a couple of months, actually, getting this lined up. But yeah. For those of you who don't know you in the audience, maybe you can tell everybody a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I am a combination of things. I'm a BPO and an RPA guy. So what that meant was, the beginning of my career, I was helping enterprises tap into global talent, finding really good, highly skilled people all over the world. And about 12 years ago, that was luckily the place where we started to play with automation to augment and emulate some of the work that those people were doing. And so that sent me on my second sort of career journey, which was around automation and how do you digitize tasks in enterprises, front, middle, and back office. It resulted in launching an RPA consultancy about 11 years ago. Awesome journey, so much fun, built a great family, had a team all over the world, worked with amazing clients, and learned a ton, and did that for a few years, sold it. And since then have been sort of following random passions. I invest in AI startups and help advise them, hopefully with some skills that I've picked up along the way. I educate, just as you do. I've got LinkedIn learning courses, just as you do. I've written some books, just as you have. And I just love being part of this community and hopefully sharing useful information for folks who are starting their journey, who are expanding their journey and looking how to tap into what has been an amazing set of capabilities that's just so much more than those few tools we started playing with 11, 12 years ago. It is a robust and sometimes very confusing toolkit we have available to us today.
That's all right. Awesome. Hey, I must tell you, you've been a great inspiration for me. So with all the, just as you do, you actually went first, and you've inspired me to follow that path.
I appreciate that.
LinkedIn learning courses, the Creator Accelerator program, and just seeing what you do for the community and how you share your knowledge as well.
It's fun stuff. Yeah. It is fun stuff, and it's and there are skills that you collected through your professional career that are so invaluable, and that you take the time yourself to share them in a way that's not sort of just creating and influencing for sake of being a creator or influencer, but because you actually know it, you actually understand it, resonates in everything you do. And I'm thrilled if I could have been even the smallest of inspirations to you on that journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. So folks, if you're just joining the stream, drop a comment in the chat where you're joining us from. I'm always curious to see how global our audience is. And, we're going to talk about books, and I'm sure you have a copy as well that you might hold up, one of your book. I got one of mine. So also don't forget to pick up one of this, and okay, right. So swap, right? Oh, boy, both. So definitely we got you covered with lots of great insights, whether it's about citizen development or overall AI leadership. Now, you've been on the show before together with a few other guests, but this time, I got a surprise for you. The same surprise that I got for everybody, right?
Okay.
And so the little icebreaker, right? When I hit this buzzer over here, you'll see a sentence. And I'd like you to answer with the first thing that comes to mind and why. And to make it a little more interesting, you have 60 seconds for your answer.
Good, thank you.
Probably seen this by now.
Look at the speed round for slow people.
Yeah. So are you ready for What's the Buzz?
I am. Let's do this.
So let's do this. If AI were a sports car, what would it be? 60 seconds on the clock.
The Tesla Coupe, the small little sporty one that has yet to come back out again, but it would be that.
And why?
Well, because it's wicked fast. Doesn't necessarily. It is a lot of promise. Doesn't necessarily exist yet. But a lot of the mechanics and the elements of it do exist, and now we're just we're waiting to see it. That sounds very negative about AI, but it is here in pieces and parts.
Wonderful. Sounds a little bit like a Tesla advertisement. I hope.
Yeah, exactly. I do drive one, although I'm looking at various other things now. There's some cool new vehicles out there.
Well, a little eco-friendliness in the AI space would go a long way too.
That's true. That's an interesting point. Yes, the Tesla doesn't consume all the energy that LLMs do. So there you have it.
Not the one of an entire power plant.
That's right. Okay, how did I do? Is that the only one? Because that was faster than 60 seconds. Now we got to vamp and fill time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So definitely 60 seconds is over, and it was a wonderful answer. Good explanation and good example of AI. But we're obviously not just here to talk about random questions and coming up with answers.
Wait, what?
This topic of citizen development is actually near and dear to my heart, because I've spent a lot of time in IT, and even 10, 15 years back, getting the technology and what it can do. As I mentioned in your intro, there's just been so much tech being layered on top of each other, from RPA to machine learning, generative AI. Yes, there are all these possibilities, and about 2 years ago we're saying you don't have to be an AI expert to work in AI. That's what your background is, plus AI, and I think that's still true. But man, if I look at my feed, it seems that that's truer than ever, with everybody all of a sudden jumping on that bandwagon. But I'm curious, how are you seeing this play out in business, this whole topic of citizen development, and what should people know about this going into it?
Yeah, so the reason I embarked on the research that went into the book with my co-author, Tom Davenport, who is a legend in many spaces and has written 25 books. And so that was just a joy to be able to do that project with him. But the reason we embarked on it is because, as we said, 11, 12 years ago, there was this concept of automation that could emulate the work that people was doing. And so we embarked on that. We took a look at it. It was working, but it still required some rigor. It wasn't easy for a business analyst couldn't do it. And yet the narrative in the space was often, it's so easy, a business analyst can do it. And there was a lot of narrative around just having everyone have their own robot. And that was, from a marketing and a sales perspective, totally get it. Understood why that was the narrative. But from an execution perspective, it was harder than that. But then progressively over time, and you mentioned there were layers of higher complexity with intelligent document processing and machine learning and some other things, and process mining and discovery, et cetera. There was still a commitment to that narrative of making it easy enough that a broader audience and a broader user base can actually capitalize on this set of capabilities. And so what happened was we started to use, or vendors started to use, these terms low code and no code. And I kind of thought that was funny, because ultimately it's weird to name a software trend after the complexity of the tool. I sort of joke, it's like calling a stick shift car harder to drive and a manual car easy drive. And you can buy a harder drive or an easier drive car. What do you want? And so lower code or no code really was a way that we were classifying technology that required less coding. There's more visual, more building with puzzle pieces, drag and drop, et cetera. Unfortunately, even then, it still wasn't so easy that a business analyst could do it. But in the course of our research, and actually after we went to press, this stuff is getting easier and easier. Ultimately, prompting, which is the ultimate in no coding, where you're just using human language to articulate what it is that you have dreamed up that you'd like to see turned into something. Sometimes it's an email, sometimes it's a poem, but sometimes it's code in applications and et cetera. That is happening now at a rate that we've never seen before. And so this low and no code, whether we use those terms or not, are truly becoming possible. And so what that meant was domain experts, the people who understand the scope of the work that they do. If you're in HR and you understand employee onboarding, if you're in finance and accounting and you are an expert in accounts payable or receivable or whatever else, those domain experts now, more so than ever before in the history of work and the history of work with technology, can turn those domain expertise, those skills that they have and the needs that they know that they have to get their job done more efficiently, they can start turning those into applications, integrations, and data models. And so that's what I think is so exciting about citizen development is there have always been citizens. Developing for them has been hard. It's getting easier and easier. And there's two reasons why that's exciting. One, because digital transformation requires a huge, huge number of people to contribute, and there just aren't enough IT professionals to do that. And two, IT and business have always been an oil-water dynamic that don't understand each other, don't really work well together. So not to say we don't need IT, but if you have the actual end user more intimately involved in designing and executing that which they dream up and need, man, this is a renaissance of digitization across every enterprise of all sizes, in every department, every nook and cranny. Citizen development for the win. That was not a short
Wonderful
synopsis,
Yeah,
but I'm clearly passionate about this stuff.
That's wonderful. I read a post by 𝗕𝗕𝗃𝗁𝗃, where he said, hey, if you're an AI CE, some kind of an innovation C coming the bottleneck again as well. And I was so reminded of IT, because when I talk to IT decision makers, they tell me, yeah, there are all these things that we need to do, and we have backlog of things. And even in my corporate career in IT, I said, yeah, well, you can come back, next year maybe, or in 6 months, because we're really, really busy with other things. So
yes.
I do see that promise, and I do see that value of citizen development, with certain guardrails, certainly empowering your business, empowering your users to do the things that are easy enough, scalable enough, yet
yes.
not, your security and your integrity of the business.
Totally agree. By the way, it was that IT roadmap, right? Sort of necessity's mother of invention. It was bottleneck was the mother of invention in the RPA days. IT just could not get to projects that business users found useful and valuable, and so they found an outlet. They found a way to work around IT, and that was RPA initially. And it's only getting easier. It's only getting more powerful. We assert in the book strongly, A, a need for governance, to your point, and B, a need for collaboration, because otherwise this becomes the gray IT, rogue digital initiatives and shadow that you do not want in any enterprise ever.
I agree. Yeah. And by the way, it's great to see so many folks joining. You see Ramnath and Douglas and Stephen and Martin. So thank you for being with us. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat as well, and we'll pick them up in a couple of minutes. I do want to make sure that this continues to be an interactive show. That's why we are live. So please keep your questions.
And easy.
But,
keep your questions
with
easy.
all of that, and it's Tuesday, just afternoon in the US, so keep them easy, keep them light. But as we're already saying, there's so much tech in a business layered on untapped potential. So why do we talk about citizen development? Why do we need this? Say in addition to bottlenecks, what are things that domain experts in their respective business functions can all of a sudden do, or what do they need to do?
Yeah. So I think there are there are tiers and levels that, I mean, there's that which is possible and that's which is sort of reasonable. And again, in the book, we might touch on this later, but we've got several different frameworks and structures that we major on, both because we saw it happening within the enterprises we interviewed, and also we knew it should happen in any enterprise that wants to embark on this sort of citizen journey. But back to the fundamental point, there's more work than there are IT professionals to do that work. There is a greater level of expectation and marketing around the potential for, let's call it AI. And I mean a lot under that umbrella, but a lot of people are hearing a lot of things about it, especially in this era of AI agents, where it seems like that is just all of the news, all of the story, all of the update, all of the product release. And I mean, every single major enterprise now has agent as the concept that they're organizing around. So the lens through which we look at the work that we do is heavily AIified and agentified, and we want to see it used. And so that automatically creates a massive supply demand gap. And so there are, which I think is a good thing, in so much as in the old days you'd do sort of continuous improvement exercises and Kaizen and lean exercises where you'd study Pareto's and whatever. I'm showing sort of my background, but you would identify areas of opportunity. This sort of is a shot in the arm for that initiative. Everybody almost can't help but look at their work through a lens of what can automation do for me, which is really exciting. And the other thing that we found in the book and in the interviews that we had was the level of digital quotient, just the shared vocabulary is such now that a business person and an IT person that find themselves in a collaboration session or in a meeting room of any sort are often much closer together than they ever have been. Right? They're speaking similar languages. They understand constraints. They're discussing the art of the possible. They know what the existing enterprise architecture enables or constrains. And I think that's been a huge asset, just to evolve that discussion to a point where we can be brainstorming what is possible. Now, it still comes back to, do you have the capabilities? Do you have the guardrails and governance internally? And do you have the right tools to enable that? And that's up to an enterprise and often leadership and IT to decide on how to approach that.
Now, are you seeing that business is getting more tech savvy and literate, or IT is getting more business? Both? What did you find in the interviews? I'm curious there.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's more the former than the latter. I believe that business is becoming more tech savvy just because of, and this is not the last few weeks, this is the last decade, that they're becoming more tech savvy. But I also think it is as a necessity, it is requiring that IT become more business savvy because they are having those discussions with business users, and they are. I mean, IT's role is to support an enterprise. Right? Every company is now a software company, but the company first and foremost is a product company or a service company. They have customers, they have strategy, and IT's role is to enable and supercharge that. And so we argue in the book that IT has to find a way to do two things, which is never easy. But one of them is the traditional enterprise IT role of making sure all of the traditional systems, the ERP systems and CRM systems, and now more and more the security and compliance and regulatory components of an enterprise are sound and stable and safe. But they also have to build in this sort of guidance element, which is one of the frameworks we touch on, which is around educating and nurturing and sort of shepherding a lot of efforts that will happen whether they want them to or not. So you don't have a choice. It's happening. You do have a choice about how you respond to it and how you enable it. You're never stopping it, I would argue. You can try, but
I think that's a big realization for technology-driven departments. It's happening, and you get to decide, how much you will be involved in how much control you can still exercise over it,
Yes.
if at all, right? It's all
Yeah.
about guardrails, not so much the stopping.
Well, and we had a frame. So the
At the
framework
chat
in the
and I
book is
see.
sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
The framework in the book is a 4G framework, and the G's, the traditional G's everyone talks about and constantly brings up are governance and guardrails, and we added 2 more. One of them was guidance, is that concept of IT being and IT, not just IT, but other elements of the organization, educating, supporting, sponsoring, coaching, etc. But the first G, so we added a first G, which is Genesis. And the purpose of that was, Genesis is the beginning of something. And the purpose of that G was ultimately to explore that concept that if you think you're spearheading this initiative in your organization, quite frankly, you're wrong. It is already there. It is already started. So you are not starting this. The genesis of the sort of the innovation and the penchant to DIY or to make or to build or to iterate has always been in your best people. And they did it with Excel macros beforehand. They have more powerful versions of tools to do that in today. And so you just have to recognize that is happening everywhere in your organization. Hopefully, I mean, genuinely, hopefully you've got people who are those creators and builders and makers who think big thoughts and solve big problems and try to make their operations more efficient. Now it's up to you to decide how you enable them.
So I'm curious there, right? Building on this, and what you said earlier around exercising some kind of control or guardrails. Coming back to your 4Gs, and I see Doug is on in the audience today, Doug Shannon, and he said, "Hey, how do you see the potential rise of shadow AI code coming into play, and how do we verify that the code is safe, is sound, is well written?" To me, that kind of goes into the direction of how can you have some some control over this citizen
Yes.
development, and how do you make sure that what citizen developers build actually works, and that you don't end up doing the maintenance for it?
So there's a lot of questions in there. Yes, I mean, so ultimately, a simple answer is you need to have some form of platform, right? You need to have some set of tools that are vetted and approved by the enterprise that your citizens can work in. Because the last thing you want is bring it from home, just chaos where everybody finds their and by the way, in the old days there was a small number of tools that they might be able to sneak into the enterprise and start playing with. Now it seems like that list is infinite. so this gets harder, but you need to enable them with the tools and the sort of the building set that they can use. And you saw that. You see that to some degree with things like Copilot in the Microsoft platform that most enterprises have. There are others that they may have already had in-house, and so some of the RPA platforms are well positioned. And if you've got UiPath, wall to ceiling, then that's a place where you start to do the brainstorming and look for ways to digitize more broadly. So those are the sorts of platforms you need to lean on, because you don't want to enable just a pure bring your own device or bring your own automation sort of mentality. And then to the point of how do you prevent shadow? Again, it's around those guardrails of, you can't build anything. And in the book, we discuss actually sort of levels of remit. So there's those things that matter to me, to oversimplify it, and then there's those things that touch or matter to we. And so if it's a me thing, it is an application that helps me do my job. It's probably on my desktop or is very localized. Anything that starts to branch into the we, which could be any sort of crossing the boundaries into a different department or a client or a vendor or a partner or something, those start to become ones you want to govern more strongly and keep an eye on, or bring in IT to support. Because I might have a great idea, Like I am in accounts payable, and I have just a really strong idea for how to make it better for everyone. But if it starts to get complex, I'm not the person to be developing that. So you bring in IT to shepherd and to collaborate and to support those sorts of efforts, or to take them over altogether and to build them because it's a good idea. And then the maintenance thing too. The last thing you want is to have necessarily citizens maintaining their own, and some enterprises do go that way, where you have to make sure that you're updating it every once in a while, or they kill it. You have to maintain it or it goes away. But in the same old sort of logic of, in the old days, in like a mainframe, Bob would build a great tool, but you kept Bob away from bus routes because you didn't want to lose him because he's the only one who knew how it worked. I mean, you've got to obviously a plan for that sort of situation as well. So in general, robust, mature citizen programs do involve IT for the governance, the guardrailing, the remit element, and then ongoing maintenance and support. So I guess
I think that's an excellent,
to Doug's question,
point that you're making.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it also partly answers 𝗯𝗏𝗃's question, who was asking, how far, to what extent should you let citizen developers build their things? What if it gets too broad, too many users? I think you nicely answered that there is some good measurement that you need to take to say, this is what I let them, because it's me. This is what maybe we collaborate on together because it's
absolutely
it's more cool. So.
And it's, I mean, let's be clear. At no point in time are we suggesting that a citizen should replace SAP for you, right? We are not suggesting that citizens step in and retool your ERP systems and rewire how the enterprise is working. But there's nearly endless list of opportunities to transform and digitize and evolve every process within an enterprise that domain experts are closer to than IT ever will be, and they can make efforts to improve them. And if it gets bigger than sort of those very discrete solutions, then like, how lucky are we that we're able to have meaningful brainstorms with the end user and then be able to put it on a roadmap, collaborate with them, figure out what really great looks like. Not only does it solve big problems, it also keeps your best people. And so those are two wins in my book.
Awesome. Speaking of book, what's the book again where people can read all about this?
Oh, man, you just asked me to plug my own. This guy, All Hands on Tech.
Oh, wonderful.
The AI-powered citizen revolution.
Awesome. So definitely check that out, folks. Now, Ian, we're getting close to the end of the show, and I was wondering if you can summarize the key 3 takeaways for our audience today, all about citizen development.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think one of the key takeaways is this sort of ingenuity, this grassroots innovation is happening, and you want it to be happening in every corner of your business. So then it's just up to you to determine how do you enable and shepherd it so it happens safely. It is a call to arms for IT to explore how it can better collaborate with the business users, because they really do have great ideas and they are constantly creatively trying to problem solve and build, but it makes a lot more sense for you to all work together. And I guess it's just sort of a statement on the future, which is, as large language models and large action models and agentics, whatever we're calling it this week, expand and their capabilities grow, this is a call to arms, as far a call to action for constant and persistent education, because it really is important that everyone in the organization know what these tools are capable of, how they enable them, and how they supercharge them. This is, I would argue, this should never be a discussion of can you replace a human with a robot. This is more about, there's so much you don't get to that you can if you're able to tap into these capabilities. And I guess I'll add a fourth, because darn it, why not? The point, the purpose of all this isn't more applications. The purpose of this isn't more glue and integration between systems. The purpose of this is great, meaningful, valuable outcomes, and keep an eye on that, because ultimately that's the point of all of this, is to use the best tools available with the best thinking available to create the best outcomes, which create the best experiences that will enable the growth and success of the best businesses.
I love that. It all comes back to people, empowering them, giving them the tools to their work and do meaningful work, and not having to others to have time in their backlog to do this. And I think it's a super important and valuable message at this time, because I also see that we will, like you said, hear a lot more about agents and replacements and being able to do things that we haven't been able to do before in all these great and scary ways. So giving people the tools to, help themselves, I think is an excellent cause. And I'm super excited that you've had that you've taken the time to spend that with us today and talk more about.
My pleasure. Yeah, no, my pleasure. Anytime. I'll come on weekly if you'll have me. This is fun.
Yeah. Together, by the way.
We should.
So
that is actually
agents
Yep. If anybody is listening and wants to learn about agents, Andreas's courses on LinkedIn Learning are bar none. You got to check them out, because honestly, back to that raising a digital quotient and understanding what is actually part of this new vocabulary of the future of work, his courses are invaluable. Sign it to everybody in your company.
Thank you.
You won't regret it.
Thank you. And likewise about intelligent automation and yours. You've been doing this for a good amount of time too. So wonderful. Folks, if you're still with us right now, join us next week for another episode of What's the Buzz. We'll have Nico Bitzer, CEO of Bots and People, on, and we'll talk about how you can upskill your workforce and raise their AI literacy. With that, see you next time for another episode of What's the Buzz. Thank you. Bye-bye.